Imagine this, it's 1932, just after the First World War. Thousands of Australian veterans have been given land in Western Australia to start new lives as wheat farmers. They've poured their blood, sweat, and tears into their fields, hoping for a bountiful harvest. But they're not just fighting the harsh outback conditions. They're facing an enemy they never expected, a massive, feathered army. We're talking about 20,000 emus. That's right, emus. These giant, flightless birds, driven by drought, had migrated from the central regions and discovered a paradise, endless fields of delicious, ripe wheat. For the farmers, it was a nightmare. The emus weren't just eating the crops. They were trampling everything in their path, tearing down fences and leaving a trail of destruction. The farmers were desperate. They had served their country in one war, and now they found themselves in another, right on their own doorsteps. They pleaded with the government for help, and the government responded. In the most unusual way possible, they sent in the military. Yes, the actual Australian military. Major G.PW Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery was put in command of a small troop of soldiers. Their mission, to wage war on the emus, their weapons of choice. To Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. On paper, it sounded like a guaranteed victory. What chance did a bunch of birds have against modern military hardware? The media even got excited, sending a cinematographer along to capture the glorious triumph of man over beast. They were calling it the Great Emu War. The first battle took place on November 2nd. The soldiers spotted a flock of about 50 emus. They set up their machine guns, took aim, and waited for the perfect moment. This was it, the moment of truth. But as soon as the guns opened fire, the emus scattered. They ran in every direction, zigzagging across the field with incredible speed and agility. The soldiers fired round after round, but the emus were just too fast and unpredictable. At the end of the day, after hundreds of bullets had been spent, the official count of downed emus was maybe a dozen. It was a complete failure. Major Meredith was stunned. He noted in his report that the emus seemed to have an almost supernatural ability to withstand gunfire. He said, if we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. They can face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks. The emus, it turned out, were tactical geniuses. They started splitting into smaller groups, making them harder to target. One large emu would often act as a lookout, warning the others of any approaching danger. The soldiers were being outsmarted by birds. The military tried again and again. They attempted ambushes. They mounted a gun on a truck to chase the emus down. But the ride was so bumpy they couldn't land a single shot, and the emus were still faster than the truck on the rough terrain. The soldiers grew more and more frustrated. The public and politicians back in the cities started to ridicule the entire operation. After about a month of this comical and utterly ineffective campaign, with thousands of rounds fired and only a handful of emus culled, the Minister of Defence called it off. The troops were withdrawn in defeat. The Great Emu War was over. The emus had won. They remained a problem for the farmers, who eventually found a more effective solution: stronger fences. But the story of the Great Emu War lives on as one of history's most bizarre and hilarious conflicts. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes nature is just far more resilient and, frankly, a lot smarter than we give it credit for. The Australian military, a force that had fought bravely across the globe, was officially defeated by a flock of flightless birds. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this weird piece of history, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more strange stories. See you in the next video. Have you ever heard of a country officially declaring war on a bunch of birds and losing? It sounds like a joke, but I promise you, this is a real story from the history books. Let's travel back to 1932 to the vast, sun-scorched farmlands of Western Australia. After World War I, the Australian government encouraged former soldiers to take up farming. They were given land to cultivate, primarily wheat. Life was tough, but these veterans were tougher. However, they soon faced an enemy they had never trained for. An army of 20,000 emus. That's right, emus. These giant, flightless birds, driven by drought, had migrated into the newly developed agricultural areas. To them, these sprawling wheat fields were an all-you-can-eat buffet. They trampled fences, devoured crops, and left a trail of destruction, threatening the very livelihood of the farmers. Desperate, the farmers appealed to the government for help. And the government's response, well, it was unconventional, to say the least. The Minister of Defence, Sir George Pearce, decided to deploy the military. He dispatched a small contingent of soldiers from the Royal Australian Artillery, armed not with rifles, but with 2 heavy-duty Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. Their mission? To wage war on the emu population. The media eagerly dubbed it the Great Emu War. It seemed like a simple task. What chance did a flock of birds have against modern military hardware? The first engagement took place on November 2nd. The soldiers spotted a flock of about 50 emus. They set up their machine guns, took aim, and opened fire. The result? Utter chaos. The emus, instead of falling in neat rows, scattered in every direction, running unpredictably at speeds up to 30 miles per hour. Their feathers were so thick that many bullets just bounced off. After firing hundreds of rounds, the soldiers had only managed to take down a handful of birds. The emus had outmaneuvered them completely. A few days later, the soldiers tried a new tactic. They planned an ambush near a local dam, hoping to catch over 1,000 emus as they came for a drink. This time, they were sure of success, but just as they opened fire, one of the Lewis guns jammed. The emus, startled but largely unharmed, once again scattered into the bush. The soldiers were left staring at an empty field, their frustration mounting. Major G.PW Meredith, the officer in command, was in awe of their enemy. He reported that the emus seemed to have leaders, with large, black-plumed birds acting as lookouts, warning the flock of any danger. He famously commented, "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world." The press had a field day. Headlines mocked the military's struggle. One ornithologist pointed out that the army's tactics were flawed, as emus don't flock together in a dense mob, but instead break into smaller, nimble groups when attacked. After about a week of this comical failure, and with only a few hundred emus culled at the cost of thousands of bullets, the war was called off. The troops were withdrawn in humiliation. The emus had won the first round, but the emu problem didn't go away. The farmers' pleas continued, and a second military campaign was launched a few weeks later. This time, the soldiers had slightly more success, but the cost in ammunition was still ridiculously high. By mid-December, the operation was permanently shut down. The government concluded that military intervention was simply not effective. In the end, the official reports claimed just under 1,000 emus were killed. Not exactly a decisive victory when you're facing an army of 20,000. So, who won the Great Emu War officially? No one. But unofficially, history has awarded the victory to the emus. They proved to be a more formidable and resilient foe than anyone could have imagined. This bizarre chapter in Australian history serves as a humbling reminder that sometimes nature is just impossible to beat. What started as a serious pest control problem turned into one of the most absurd and hilarious conflicts ever recorded. And what happened to the emu problem? Eventually, the government implemented a bounty system, which proved to be far more effective than machine guns. The farmers also built stronger, emu-proof fences. But the legend of the Great Emu War lives on, a testament to the time an army went to war with birds and the birds flew well, ran away with the victory. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this weird piece of history, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more strange stories from the past. See you next time.